Howdy y'all, it's Reese, aka Bearman Prime on this April 29th. Welcome back to my Read the Bible in a Year series. Thank you again for joining me. God bless you all. Card the top right hand corner for the rest of the playlist, and please hit the like button, the subscribe button, that notification bell. Really do appreciate it. So yesterday we made a quick stop in the book of Ezra, written by the prophet Ezra, as he recounted very briefly the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. It had been destroyed after Israel had been conquered and the people scattered. And so now Ezra has led a group of exiles along with a group led by Nehemiah, who we're going to cover today, back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple and the wall and start helping the city to rebuild itself. So now we're going to go into the book of Nehemiah, as I said. So Nehemiah and Ezra pretty much go hand in hand. They both work together at this time to lead the exiles back to Jerusalem and Israel at large. So Nehemiah is a commoner, actually. He's a common Jew who is in the service of King Artaxerxes, the king of Persia at this time. And he is the king's cupbearer. So if you don't know anything about royal etiquette protocol, things like that, the cupbearer was a very important person because they had to be very trustworthy, because they would literally bring the king his cup of wine or drink or whatever, and they had to ensure that it wasn't tainted or poisoned. So, they would obviously have to drink it themselves in order to, or they would prepare the drink themselves, give to the king. So it was and back then, the fear of poison and assassination by poison was much more prevalent than it is today. So, the cupbearer was a very trusted and respected position. So Nehemiah is a Jew who is serving as the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes of Persia, and he's stricken with grief over just getting the news that Jerusalem has been destroyed, the temple has been destroyed, and he just feels so moved that he wants to lead a group of people back to rebuild the temple and the wall. And so we're going to read about his story here over the next 3 days. One other thing to mention about the book of Nehemiah is that it looks like it is written entirely from the first person point of view. So it's going to be a lot of I's and me's as I read this. So just bear that in mind, that this is Nehemiah speaking. All right. So we're going to begin today in Nehemiah chapter 2, starting in verse 1. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, some wine was brought to the king. I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had never before been sad when I was with him, but now I was sad. So the king asked me, "Are you sick? Why do you look sad? I think your heart is full of sadness." Then I was very afraid. But even though I was afraid, I said to the king, "May the king live forever. I am sad because the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and the gates of that city have been destroyed by fire." Then the king said to me, "What do you want me to do?" Before I answered, I prayed to the God of heaven. Then I answered the king, "If it would please the king, and if I have been good to you, please send me to Jerusalem, the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried. I want to go there and rebuild that city." The king and the queen, who was sitting next to him, asked me, "How long will your trip take? When will you get back here?" The king was happy to send me, so I gave him a certain time. I also said to the king, "If it would please the king to do something else for me, let me ask. Please give me some letters to show the governors of the area west of the Euphrates River. I need these letters so that the governors will give me permission to pass safely through their lands on my way to Judah. I also need lumber for the heavy wooden beams for the gates, the walls around the temple, and my house. So I need a letter from you to Asaph, who is in charge of your forests." The king gave me the letters and everything I asked for. The king did that because my God was kind to me. So I went to the governors of the area west of the Euphrates River and gave them the letters from the king. The king had also sent army officers and soldiers on horses with me. Sanballat from Horon and Tobiah the Ammonite official heard about what I was doing. They were very upset and angry that someone had come to help the Israelites. Verse 11. I went to Jerusalem and stayed there 3 days. Then at night I started out with a few men. I had not said anything to anyone about what my God had put on my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no horses with me except the horse I was riding. While it was dark, I went out through the valley gate. I rode toward the dragon well and the gate of ash piles. I was inspecting the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down and the gates in the wall that had been burned with fire. Then I rode on toward the fountain gate and the king's pool. As I got close, I could see there was not enough room for my horse to get through. So I went up the valley in the dark, inspecting the wall. Finally, I turned back and went back through the valley gate. The officials and important Israelites didn't know where I'd gone. They didn't know what I was doing. I had not yet said anything to the Jews, the priests, the king's family, the officials, or any of the other people who would be doing the work. Then I said to them, "You can see the trouble we have here. Jerusalem is a pile of ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. Then we will not be ashamed anymore." I also told them that my God had been kind to me. I told them what the king had said to me. Then they answered, "Let's start the work now." So we began this good work. But Sanballat from Horon, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard that they were building again. They made fun of us in a very ugly way. They said, "What are you doing? Are you turning against the king?" But this is what I said to them. The God of heaven will help us succeed. We are God's servants, and we will rebuild this city. You cannot help us in this work because none of your family lived here in Jerusalem. You don't own any of this land, and you have no right to be in this place. All right. The work has begun. Nehemiah has led a small group. It is a small group. It's not a whole nation, but it's a small group of dedicated people to start the work, rebuilding the wall and the temple around Jerusalem. Of course, we see that God has moved Artaxerxes, king of Persia, in such a way to help Nehemiah out. Artaxerxes is moved enough to provide the means, the resources, and the tools that Nehemiah needs to complete the work. We also see some other characters here that we should take note of. That is Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. So these three pop up, quite frequently throughout the book of Nehemiah as naysayers, as enemies, as just people who are trying, for whatever reason, trying their very best to stop the work, to prevent Nehemiah from rebuilding Jerusalem. They have no love for Israel, for the Jews, and they are just trying, doing whatever they can to stop them. They're very rich men, so they, try to use their influence and their power to prevent them. But, throughout the book, we see that their efforts are in vain, and God overcomes them. And this is quite a good picture for us too, for what happens in our lives, because how often do we try to do something, and even if it's not other people telling us, how often do we have those voices in our heads that say, "You can't do this. What are you doing? Why are you fighting against the world? Why are you trying to, be so different," or anything like that? And that's Satan talking. That's the world trying to tell you to not follow God. Okay? But we see here that Nehemiah was not swayed by their jeering and their threats. Nehemiah continued the work despite that, because he knew that God was on his side. And we should remember that too, that God is on our side no matter what we try to do. That's all for today. We're going to pick it up there tomorrow. Thank you again for joining me. I sure do appreciate it, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.